take a seat. If you'd like to sit and be seated, we welcome you to take a seat. We'd like to, I'm telling you to take a seat. In the next breath, I'm going to tell you if everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. Now you can have a seat. Welcome, a little bit, to the Livingston Parish Chamber of Commerce Congressional Debate, the only debate for the 6th District. Thank you to candidates Edwin Edwards and Garret Graves for your participation and attendance tonight. Thanks to Florida Parishes TV and Action News for the live streaming of this well thought out event, and one that gained lots of interest. We'd also like to thank the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office, Forest Grove Plantation, Advanced Audio and Lighting, the Chamber Board of Directors, and the Debate Committee who worked tirelessly to assure a successful event this evening. There are over 7,000 local chambers of commerce in the country, over 70 in the state of Louisiana alone. Each is separate from the other, and we all act independently, advocating for our own communities or regions and their economic drivers, those who create jobs and employ our residents. Although independent, chambers will come together for common causes, such as the national flood insurance rates and its pending negative impact on local economies. An issue with work that still has to be done, and that's just one example of chambers coming together. At Chamber of Commerce meetings and events, you can always find those who care, have vision, and investing in their communities in more ways than one. What you may not see are all of the chamber meetings, or the hundreds or even thousands of members and their tens of thousands of employees that depend on local chambers to represent them while they are busy running their business, assuring payroll is met, and that a positive bottom line is the outcome. The Livingston Parish Chamber of Commerce represents business in the parish and region, from the largest employer to the smallest mom and pop. Livingston is one of the 2 fastest growing parishes in the state of Louisiana. The growth projections are astounding, including a projection of population doubling in a short period of time. Desirable homes don't stay on the market long, and retail and healthcare are on the move here, following the rooftops and the demographics of this parish and region. Chambers are the great connector, connecting business, community, residents, education, nonprofits, and community leaders, many of whom were involved in the chamber or their programs at one point. And that is why we're hosting this event tonight, for connections, because what happens at the federal level does affect the local economy. Today, we exercise our ability to connect local voters with the lawmakers who decide policy and ultimately its effect on the economy, local residents, quality of life, and a desirable community. Tonight, one of these gentlemen will be the voice and representative of this local area. The chamber doesn't set law or policy, determine candidates, or decide who will be that representative. That's up to the voters to decide. What we will do is provide the opportunity for each of you to get to know them and their issues. Or their stance on issues. We do pledge to work closely with the winning candidate to bring a local grassroots voice and the chamber's member perspective to our new representative, and we look forward to the relationship. And I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Brian Abels. He's on the Chamber Board of Directors. He's a local attorney, and he's pretty good at what he does. And so thank you all once again, and we look forward to an informative evening.
Thank you, April. And I want to also, on behalf of the Livingston Parish Chamber of Commerce, thank all of you again for being here and welcome you to our debate tonight. I want to thank all of those that are watching, and I also, of course, want to thank our candidates. Thank both of you for being here participating tonight. Our format for tonight's debate is as follows. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. Then we have 6 questions. Each candidate will get 3 questions. They will then have 3 minutes to answer their question that they have fielded, and their opponent will then have 90 seconds to offer a rebuttal. The questions were chosen by the candidates just a few minutes ago themselves at random, and Mr. Graves drew the first question. Once the question and answer session is complete, each candidate will then have 3 minutes for a closing statement, and that will complete the debate. So, without further ado, we will get started. And for our opening statement, Mr. Graves will go first.
Thank you very much. My name is Garret Graves, and grew up in Baton Rouge, a big Catholic family here. I've never run for office in my life, and I've never, ever had intentions of running for office. I had the opportunity to work for some great elected officials in Louisiana, and I learned a lot of things about our state. And I think we have a fantastic state. For about 7 months, folks came to me, they came to my wife, and they asked us to run. They asked us to run for Congress. And for about 7 months, my wife and I told both of us told everyone that we weren't running. Didn't have an interest in ever crossing that line and becoming a politician. Didn't want to do it. And my wife finally woke up one morning and she said, you know what, you need to run. I rolled over and looked at her and, what happened? She said, you know what? I hate politics, you know that. But you know what you offer. You know this district, very gerrymandered district, going from Point to Pea Parish all the way down to the Terrebonne Coast. You know the people. You know the issues affecting this region, and you know how to get things done. I love my wife, but she'll readily tell you a lot of things in my life I don't do well. In this case, she said, you'll do this well, and I will. You know, our state has been blessed with tremendous resources. Everything from our great seafood, our great restaurants, which inspires the tourism industry. We have an incredible river system that makes us the most important state in the United States for global trade. We have the top ports in the United States. We have an amazing energy industry that literally fuels this nation's economy. And we have one of the most productive workforces in the United States. Not a statistic I made up, something that the United States Department of Commerce has determined. We have an amazing state and we've been blessed well. However, Louisiana citizens don't have the state that they deserve. They don't have the future that they deserve. We've seen the cards, we've seen the blessings, we've seen the natural resource that our state has been given. We've seen them misplayed, we've seen them abused. We've seen a past of corruption, and we have not achieved the great future or the great potential that the state of Louisiana truly has. One of the things that inspired me to run is because of the fact, if you look at the national level, we have a president that has increased our debt by 70%. We have a president that's come in and offering amnesty to 5 million illegal aliens, taking jobs away from law-abiding Americans, and putting more people on government-dependent welfare programs. We have a Washington, we have a Congress, we have a White House that is out there allowing ISIS to run roughshod over the Middle East, to go out there and take over all the gains that we were able to win by the war in the Middle East, by stabilizing Iraq. We've seen traffic problems in this region that are worse than anywhere else in the nation, and we've seen flooding and flood insurance issues that are absolutely profound. I'm not perfect. I'm not. I'll be the first one to admit it. But I love our state. I've had the opportunity to work in the private sector and the public sector. I've had some amazing bosses, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to represent you and your values in Washington. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Graves. And now for his opening statement, candidate Mr. Edwin Edwards.
I thank the Chamber for hosting this. I'm happy to be here. This is a great parish. It's growing fast, second fastest in the state. It's the second largest in voter turnout in the whole 6th district, and I'm very proud to be here. You have everything here. A good school system, stable local government, good highways, fine people. You have everything, except the easy way to get here. But, unlike my opponent, I've run for office many times. And I've done that since I was 25 years old. I did that because I have a desire to serve, and I felt like I had something in me that gave me that opportunity to do so, because that's what I wanted to do. There never was a time in my adult life when I wasn't in a position to help people, and I've done it every chance I could. I'm going to make it simple. I was governor of this state for 16 years, and you got to know me. If you like the way I did things, then vote for me for Congress, because that's the kind of congressman I'm going to be. When I see a job opportunity, I get it done. When the phone rings, I answer it. I know what the people of this state want, and I know how to get it done. I have been to Congress, I know how it operates, and I will have an advantage over other freshman members entering because of my prior service. Having said that, unlike my opponent, I love this state. I'm proud of it. It has faults, of course, but I've been to every state in the Union but one. And I can tell you what, it's the same thing. They have some of the same problems that we have. Ours is somewhat different because of our location. And I think it's an opportunity for us to capitalize on the good things about Louisiana rather than to run it down. Now, he might be right. Maybe it ain't so good. His sponsor, Governor General, doesn't seem to want to stay here. And I love it here. And I want to go to Congress to represent you, because you're looking at a fellow who can do the job. And I hope you'll consider me for that job, because one thing I can tell you, I've been around a long time. I've had all kind of bad things said about me, some good, some not, but let me tell you this. If everything bad said about me were true, and I had taken all the money that all the people have said for all these years, it would be a drop in the bucket compared to what my opponent and his family, including his brother-in-law, have made since he became General's coastal advisor. Nothing that anybody has ever suggested that I was into the till for that kind of money. Now look, none of that is true, and I've laughed it off for years, and I'm not prepared to argue tonight. Believe it if you will, don't if you don't. But I guarantee you it's not correct, and I'm very happy to be with you here tonight to tell you this is your opportunity to make things right. And I'm going to try to do that by serving you well in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to get into the question and answer part of the debate. Again, the candidate that fields the question will have 3 minutes to answer. His opponent will then have 90 seconds for rebuttal. And based upon the draw before we got started, Mr. Garret Graves gets the first question, and that question is on taxes and the national debt. Overall, taxpayers faced an average tax increase of 1.8% in 2013. Yet just recently, in the first 8 weeks of the fiscal year 2015, the U.S. Treasury issued over $1 trillion in new debt. What is your proposal to reduce the debt, and can it be done without raising taxes?
Thank you. You know, it's interesting. You all remember when the government was shut down at the end of last year. During that period of time, you heard the White House out there saying that we were to see all sorts of drastic impacts on our state, on our nation. And to tell you, I didn't feel them. I saw them attempt to make it a drastic impact, but I didn't feel them and I didn't see them. Do you know when we had the highest growth of our economy, which quarter we had the highest growth in our economy in recent years? It was the quarter when the government was shut down. That's when our nation's economy increased. Do you know when we had negative growth? In the first quarter of this year when it reopened. There's an analogy there. There's a lesson to be learned there. The government has grown too big. This president has increased our debt by 70% just in his term. We don't need to be providing cell phones to people. We don't need to be providing welfare to all these folks out there. This country was based upon a principle, or two principles. The first of which, we're a Christian nation. People can say what they want. This nation has a Christian foundation, Judeo-Christian foundation. The second thing is, and importantly, This nation was based upon the concept that everyone was given equal opportunity to succeed. If you worked hard, you were given an opportunity to succeed. When I grew up, I was the fourth of 5 kids. We lived in a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. 4 kids sleeping in 2 beds pushed together in one of those bedrooms. That's how I grew up. My father has worked and worked and worked very hard. I didn't learn until I was in high school that you didn't work 7 days a week. Most folks did. I didn't realize in high school that the workday didn't end until 10:30 p.m. Because those are the hours my father worked, and those are the days my father worked. And he achieved his definition of the American dream. We've got to reinstill that definition of success, those opportunities, back in the American public. We've got to stop going out and allowing people to earn $25 an hour by not working, as we've seen under this administration. $25 an hour just by taking advantage of this nation's social welfare programs. It's wrong. When I worked in state government, I went into state government, I looked around, we had 6 agencies that were tripping over each other. I went to the governor and I said, Governor, I want to reorganize, I want to streamline these agencies that are tripping over each other. We streamlined them, we introduced competition within government. Government shouldn't have a monopoly on most things, defense and perhaps a few other things set aside. By introducing competition and streamlining the structure, by integrating funds, we increased output 500%. Those are the types of solutions that I wanted to bring to Washington. We don't need 20 agencies all imposing environmental regulations on you. We don't need to be paying for the government that's there today. We can reduce the size of government, reduce the tax burden, and release this nation's economic potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Edwards, you have 90 seconds for rebuttal.
One thing we could do is to stop allowing corporations to go overseas to manufacture their goods and services and let them make millions of dollars without having to pay taxes on it. That's something, a loophole that could be closed very easily and should be closed, and it would generate a significant amount of income for the country. Next, we can certainly cut off some of the government services, but we've got to be careful how we do that because it impacts people whose lives are involved and lives are jeopardy. Let me say this. My grandparents were Democrats. My father and mother were Democrats. I grew up in the Depression. The country was saved by a Democratic president, Franklin Roosevelt. Much of the debt that we have today comes from 2 Republican presidents who put us in 2 undeclared and unpaid wars. Prior to that time, whenever we got involved in a war, it was declared, and the Congress of the United States and the President arranged for revenue at the time by increased taxes in order to pay for it. In World War II, income taxes went up to 90%, but it was necessary in order to pay for it so that our children wouldn't have to pay for it. Those are the kind of things that a responsible person would look at trying to get the problem solved.
Thank you very much. The next question is for candidate Edwin Edwards, and it is on education. More than 50% of students entering 2-year colleges are required to take remedial courses. It is estimated that by 2020, 123 million American jobs will be high-skilled, high-wage jobs with only 50 million qualified workers to fill them. How can we close this gap and prepare young Americans for a global, competitive workplace?
Here's the thing. Not everybody wants to go to college to be a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor. Not everybody wants to be a lawyer. Some people want to work for a living. My point is this. We need bricklayers and plumbers and electricians and masons and carpenters and nurses. Those are all vocations that are very honorable and they earn well. When I was governor in the 70s, I revamped the entire VOTEC system in the state and built some additional ones, including one here. Now, having said that, we got to also open the door for people who desire to do things of that category because they are needed. We also need to do what we can to not cut LSU's budget by 67% because you have the pen to do it, but you allow the colleges and universities as much money as possible to operate so that they don't have to increase the tuition so that more and more children who want to go to college can afford to do so. Second, I think we ought to look at the student loan program. And I think it's important that we recognize that many people are coming out of college, including one of my daughters, owing tremendous amounts of money which they'll have a difficult time to pay until they get a job. Now, I propose reducing the interest rate on those loans and postponing the collection until they have an opportunity based upon good employment to begin repaying the thing. Bottom line is, education, there's no royal road to education. It has to come from here and here. All government could and should do is provide the opportunity and the facilities to teach people if they want to learn. But you can't force it down them, you just give them the opportunity. But I think the important thing is when they begin to see the advantages of an education, it will be easier to entice them to get involved and to get an education. And the other thing I want to say, parents. We need more parents who are more interested in the curriculum of their children. Many parents don't know the names of the teachers. They don't even know what courses the child has at school. They do not participate in homework. They just leave it up to them willy-nilly, and that is simply not working. Last thing I want to say is about core, Common Core. I believe in local control. Certainly what you have in this parish is a prime example of how good that is. I believe any program that is going to succeed requires the input and attention and support of the teaching profession. That's where the action is.
Thank you very much. Candidate Graves, you have 90 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you. I actually agree with a lot of things Mr. Edwards noted, and I want to add a few others. You know, first of all, the education end zone that we've established for students across the state and across this nation is you need to hit a 4-year college degree or you need to get an advanced degree, and that's the end zone. The reality is, as we all know, we have many students that aren't wired for that. We have students that are going to make phenomenal mechanics and bricklayers and many of the other skilled labor trades that we need here in Louisiana. We have benefited to the tune of 80,000 new employment opportunities in the state of Louisiana in recent years. We have over $100 billion in economic development projects on the horizon in our state. The problem is we don't have the workforce to support that. Because what we've done is we've established an end zone or a goal line for many of our students that they're not going to achieve. So what they do is they jump off that track. They jump off the school track going through high school, going to college, because we need to do a better job of promoting community colleges, some of our technical college systems, and skilled labor trades. So we don't have to rely upon illegal immigrants and others to fulfill those jobs, to where Louisianians, Americans can fulfill those jobs right here in our state. You know, a few other things. When Mr. Edwards was governor, we actually had the 50th best high school graduation rate in the United States. The 50th best, or the worst in the nation. We were 42nd in the number of students and the percentage of students that were attending college. And we had the worst reading rate in the United States. Those aren't the types of solutions that I think we need to replicate. We need to look at new, innovative solutions, and most importantly, we need to tailor the classroom to the aptitude and the learning abilities of our individual students and not teach to the common denominator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question goes to Candidate Graves. And it is, the topic is the internet. President Obama recently came out in support of reclassifying internet service as a utility, a move that some say would allow the Federal Communications Commission to enforce more robust regulations and protect net neutrality. What is your position on whether or not the internet should be reclassified as a utility, and why?
Thank you. You know, it's an interesting thing. I remember dating back when I used to do different types of reports for school. I'd be out there going through the Dewey Decimal System and card catalog and libraries, pulling things out. And now you don't ever have to leave your home. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your computer at your house. You can do it at virtually anywhere. And now the internet has opened doors, has provided access to information like never before. And it's obviously going to continue to take off. But I also think it's important to think about the principles of the foundation under which the internet was able to have such explosive growth. The principles or the management structure under which it was able to just take off and become available to virtually anyone around the world. And that was a system whereby it was largely unregulated. It was a system whereby the United States, through our Department of Commerce, the NTIA, was largely the owner, or I'll say the regulator of the internet, when they controlled the domain names. Number one, I'm concerned about the proposals to give those away to foreign countries. I want to make sure we establish the internet largely in the United States based upon infrastructure we established and switches we established here. I want to make sure that we continue to maintain our interest and our control over that structure. In regard to net neutrality, you know, it's a complex issue, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I'm a guru on it. I've read a lot about it. I understand you have companies like Verizon and Charter Communications that want to actually go through and force you to pay for speed. And I understand that there are proposals to allow it to basically be neutral and allow everyone to have the same access. And that's what folks like Google and Netflix and others are pushing. Number one, what I'd like to do is I'd like to sit down with some of the companies. I'd like to sit down with the FCC and some of the people that I actually used to work with, their FCC commissioners, to learn more about it. But I'll tell you, my bias at this point is to base the future upon the principles that we've succeeded under, where the internet is free, it's open, and it's accessible to everyone. Because that's the growth, that's the explosion that the internet has existed under. And I think that we need to ensure that we don't come in and restrict access or restrict future growth of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Edwards, you have a 90-second rebuttal.
There's not a more important success story in business than the growth of the internet service, and I compliment them for it. That's why I was really shocked when Governor General turned down a government grant which would not have cost the state a nickel to make internet availability to everybody in the state, especially in the rural areas, because that's a learning tool that will help a child to learn. It's an opportunity for people to use it and be in contact with the rest of the world at no cost to them, and I'm a big believer in it. The answer is no. I don't think it should be regulated. I think it's operating well as it is, and I'm perfectly pleased with it and have no complaints to make about it, except it took me a little while to learn because it all came about when I was in a place where there was no internet service. But it's a great tool. I'm very happy with it, and I don't want to see any change, except I wish that the governor had taken the money and made it available to everybody in Louisiana.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question is for candidate Edwards, and it is on immigration. President Obama's recent executive order sets forth steps for provisional legal status for millions here illegally. The House has yet to pass immigration legislation. What is your position on the executive order, and what do you see as the essential requirements of any immigration legislation that would be passed by the House of Representatives?
The United States Senate, in a bipartisan effort, Democrats and Republicans passed a very effective, comprehensive immigration bill. It went to the Republican House of Representatives. They refused to even vote on it. President Obama is signing executive orders, which I don't think he ought to sign, but he's signing them because the Congress refuses to do anything about the problem. Now here's my position. First of all, the 50,000 children that are here ought to be offered for adoption because many of them have siblings and parents or friends who can and will adopt them and provide a good home. The others need to be sent back to their countries of origin, and the country should pay for it. How? But every year we send millions of dollars to those countries. Just take it out of what we would otherwise send them, and it'll be paid for. As far as those that are already here, it's ridiculous to talk about sending 12 million people back to their countries of origin. We don't know where they are. We'd have a hard time finding them. It's very expensive. And many employers in this country depend upon them for getting the job done. They are very important to the employment status of this country. Now, I think we ought to have a 5-year plan, or 4 or 6, something, and say, okay, if you have no criminal record, and you have a job, you have 5 years or 4 or 6, whatever, to follow this procedure. If you learn English, you learn the Constitution, you have a good job, you're in a stable environment, you stay out of trouble, in a due course of time you can become a United States citizen. If you don't, we'll ship you back to where you came from. That's the way I think it ought to be done. Because all this talk about what we need to do is important, of course, but we need to do something because we have been struggling with this problem for too many years. And I, first of all, want to make sure that I agree with everybody who's even commented about the border needs to be secured by whatever means that takes. The Army, the Navy, National Guard, a better fence, more technology, whatever it is. But then we've got to address the problem we have here now and recognize that it affects more than just the immigrants that are here, but it affects the employers that are using them to keep the economy of this country going.
Thank you very much. Garret Graves, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. First of all, I think that Saturday Night Live got it right for those of you who maybe saw their skit where they basically had the Schoolhouse Rock video, and you had I'm Just a Bill song playing, and the guy comes up the steps of the Capitol and the president just pushes him down and rolls down the steps. Here's the reality. The reality is that we do have an immigration crisis, but it's a crisis that's created by the president's lack of action. There are laws on the books today that say you are to deport, that say we're to secure the border, that say that it's illegal to come into the United States by crossing the Mexican border without a visa. Those things are illegal. The crisis we have here of 11 or 12 million illegal immigrants, it's one that's created by failure to enforce existing laws. So that crisis isn't needed to be addressed with legislation. It needs to be addressed by the president doing his job. We can secure the border. And for the president, when he said that, I don't believe it. And Mr. Edwards noted, we have a military. You're going to tell me that we can't repel a foreign force coming in across our southern border? I don't believe that. Our men of the military, our men and women of the military are the best military in the nation. And I believe we can repel them if we have a will to do it. So that's the first thing we need to do. We need to secure our borders. Number two, those people that are here illegally, I don't agree with the president's granting amnesty to 5 million people. Those are people are here taking jobs away from Americans. And if those jobs are being taken away, those people are probably, in many cases, being put on the government dole, and we're paying for their different benefits. I don't think that's appropriate. Lastly, I don't think it's right for us to be providing free education, healthcare, and other social benefits to illegal immigrants. There is a legal immigration process in this country. We need to follow it. Those people need to follow it, and they should not be put in the front of the line when they knowingly and willingly broke the law and came into this country. You have millions of people that are trying to follow the law and doing it legally. If we need to reform the legal immigration process, let's take a look at that. But first, let's force compliance with existing law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for Candidate Graves, and it's on the economy. What is the most important economic issue facing America today, and how would you address that issue if elected?
Mr. Edwards noted a little while ago that companies in many cases attempt to go overseas to make different products, and in many cases bring them back here. Let's talk about the reason that they go to other countries. Why do they do that? The United States has the most expensive tax compliance, one of the most expensive labor compliance, one of the most expensive environmental compliance costs in the United States. There's a study that was done that said that just complying with regulations in this country cost up to $10,000 per employee per year. That's absurd. The cost of complying with an individual household goes into, I believe it's $8,000 a year, just for us to comply with government regulation. We've got to get the government out of our business. If you go back and look, this country was founded upon breaking from the government in England being overpowering upon us. Our country was founded upon being free and having personal liberties. Yet we're walking away from those. And I made reference earlier to the fact that this country was founded upon a principle that everyone was given the same opportunity to succeed. We incentivized hard work here in this country. And we've walked away from that. I referenced the study where you can make $25 an hour by not ever working. That's the wrong incentive. We need to be incentivizing hard work. So the solution is, number one, we've got to reduce the tax burden. We've got to get rid of all these loopholes and all these outdated tax savings out there. We've got to create a fairer, simpler tax system. Number two, We've got to get the federal government to focus upon its core responsibilities. We don't need the federal government costing thousands of dollars per employee, several $1,000s per household per year, stifling our economy just to comply with all these absurd regulations. We need to be competitive on a global scale. We need to be incentivizing people to compete here nationally, and we need to level the playing field so America can succeed. Because in Louisiana, we do have one of the most productive workforces in the nation. We do have $100 billion in economic development projects on the horizon. We do have inexpensive, readily available energy here, and we do have one of the best maritime transportation systems in the United States, right here in South Louisiana. Our future is bright here, but we've got to get the federal government out of the way. We've got to get Washington to work with us instead of against us.
Thank you very much. Candidate Edwards, you have 90 seconds for rebuttal.
That sounds good, but you got to be careful. If there was no government, kids would still be working in coal lines. If there was no government, people would still be working 80 hours a week to try to make a living. If there was no government, women and minorities would still be in the shadows of our economy and our society. And that's not right. We are a regulated society and we need the steady hand of government. Now let me point out something. These conditions about immigration and taxes and what have you, true, we have problems, but bear in mind that Republicans and Democrats are responsible for that. And I'm here to tell you that while there are solutions, shutting down the government, as some Republicans have suggested, is not the answer, because that costs us millions of dollars in a great deal of ways, and it certainly affects our credit rating around the world. Having said that, let's face reality. We got problems, but let's not put our feet in the ground and say, we're not going to compromise, we're not going to talk about it, we see the our way or no way. There are solutions, but it takes someone with experience who can deal with people of different principles and come to a principle compromise to make things work. The shutdown, the problems at the crossroads, the inability of Congress to get anything done is more our problem than all these other things we've been talking about. There are solutions, but you got to get to it and get them done.
Thank you very much. Our final question is for candidate Edwin Edwards. It's on social issues. What is the most important social issue facing America today, and how would you address that issue if elected?
The breakdown of the family unit, in my opinion. I think much of the crime, much of the lack of education, much of the unemployment, much of the problems in this country comes from the breakdown. So many children are born now to unwed parents. So many children are born in households where there's so many children that the parents cannot support them, so they end up going to a life of crime. There's just so many things that relate to and are directly the caused by the lack of a good family relationship. Now, how to do that? I'm not here to tell you, I'm not a preacher, but I will say this, that kind of a solid family relationship is going to be helpful in making this a better nation. Having said that, I also want to say this. We got to recognize that while being irresponsible may make you poor, but being irresponsible will not make you any better in any way at all. But being poor does not necessarily make you irresponsible. There are other factors that factor into it. Now, I think we got to recognize that this country grew from what it was, an agricultural economy, to an industrial one. We went through the Industrial Revolution. Things have changed. And what has happened, we now have to have things that they didn't think about it years ago. There was no hurricane protection in the days that the country was established. There were no heavy highways. There was no interstate system. There was no regulation of airways. If we didn't have national regulation, everybody could own a TV station. And these guys will tell you that the airways would have been so crowded with signals, you couldn't get a clear signal. And same with radio. And government regulation in a complex society like we have is necessary in order to keep things orderly and organized. Now, I know people like to say, and I go along with that, oh, get the government out of this, get the government out of that. But if you get the government out of everything, you're going to have anarchy. And I don't want to live in that kind of a country. We have a better country than that. We can govern it better than we've been doing, and we need to get on about the business of not arguing with ourselves, but finding a way to get things done. And that's what I'm good at.
Thank you very much. Mr. Graves, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. You know, I agree that the moral fiber of this country, that the family fabric has eroded. And I believe that we've got to put God back into this country. It was a founding principle of this nation, and it's part of our success here. And it's something that this administration particularly has walked away from. And I think it's a fatal flaw. Family's important because that's where you get a foundation. As the father of 3 young children, I know it's my role working together with my wife and our extended family to make sure that our kids are exposed to the right people, they're exposed to the right principles, they're exposed to the right ethics and morals. I know that family's important, and I know that we've got to establish a good foundation because we're not going to be able to hold their hand through life. We've got to make sure that our kids understand personal responsibility. And I'm concerned that if we move in a direction of allowing Mr. Edwards to represent our state, that we're going to go back to some of the record that we had when he was governor, including being labeled as the most dangerous state in the United States, including having the second worst murder rate in the United States, having the 3rd highest violent crime rate in the United States, having the 50th best violent death rate for children ages 15 to 19. That's not the kind of record that we need to be replicating in this state. I'll say it again, Louisiana, we deserve a brighter future. But it's going to be by putting the right policies in place, it's going to be returning back to a family structure and putting God back in our country.
Thank you very much. That completes our question and answer portion of the debate. We are left only with our closing statements, and for that, Mr. Edwin Edwards will go first.
This is my opponent's door hanger. He claims that as General's coastal advisor, he spent or supervised or used $19 billion. And of course, that's greatly exaggerated. He included in there $14.5 billion that the Corps of Engineers used to build levees around New Orleans, over which he had no control whatsoever, and actually got started and done before he became Governor General's coastal advisor. He also goes on to say that he is in charge of all these things dealing with the marsh and how he spent this money. Let me tell you one more thing you don't have here. In the 80s, when I was governor, we started a program to do something about the Amite-Comite Basin flooding, because East Ascension and West Ascension and Livingston and part of East Baton Rouge were flooding periodically. Now, here, I thought when I did that, I said, well, in a few years I'll be solved. But it isn't finished yet. Now, he's got all this money, he said, that he's spending in the 8 years or 6 years he was chairman of the committee. Why didn't he spend some of that getting it done here? It just cost $160 million. He got a grant of $300 million from BP one time. What did he do with it? Contrary to the advice of experts, he spent $160 million building sandburns in the Gulf of Mexico, which washed away within a matter of months, as had been predicted. That $160 million is all they would have taken to finish the basin of the Amite-Comite Basin and keep people in this area from flooding on a periodical basis. You folks were good enough and smart enough and intelligent enough in 2000 to vote a tax on yourself to raise the local contribution to get the job done. Now, I don't think I'd brag about spending all that money and have nothing to show for it in an area like this, which is so badly needed. The program is in the brochure what he puts out, and it listed on page 57 but nothing was done during the time that he was chairman of the committee, and I hold him responsible for that since he wants to take credit for spending all this money and doing whatever he did. Let me close one thing before he can get to it. The sand berms that I'm talking about were not flood control. They were built there because they thought it would contain the flow of oil out of the BP oil spill. But they only stopped about 1,000 barrels of oil out of 4.5 million barrels that came out of that well. They finally realized as they began to disappear that the more prudent thing to do was to use the money on building up the barrier islands, which is a good idea. But the contract went to a Florida firm. I don't know who made all the money, but let me tell you something, we got nothing for it, and the money could have been easily used and would have resolved your problem, and so you wouldn't have a bunch of irate citizens standing in knee-deep in water waiting for something to happen, because we had the opportunity during the time he and Governor General were running things here, and it just didn't get done.
Thank you very much. Mr. Graves, you have 3 minutes for a closing.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I want to thank Mr. Edwards for joining tonight as well. Everything that he just said in the last 3 minutes, when unencumbered by fact, is accurate. But when you bring fact into it, it simply is incorrect. He just made a statement that $19 billion I had no control over. Yet at the same time, he said that I used that money to give, I don't remember what the number was, $100 million in contracts to my family. Completely untrue. And I sat there and I struggled and I said, why in the world would somebody go say something like that? Why would they allege that I gave away contracts to family members? It's potentially illegal, obviously immoral. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm struggling with it. Then I went back and started doing some research and found a quote from Mr. Edwards dating back to several years ago, where he said, quote, "Lying is a big part of my job." Like, oh, it's beginning to make more sense. You know, secondly, why would somebody ever believe that somebody in government isn't there just to do their best? And I'll say it again, I said this in my opening, I'm not perfect. There was one person that I'm aware of that lived on this earth who was perfect, and it wasn't me. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in my job, I've fessed up to them, and I've tried to fix them. But I have not done anything illegal, immoral, or unethical in my job. I haven't. Why would somebody believe that that's something that happens in government? Because when they were in government, that's exactly what happened. Things have changed today. We can't afford to move back to the governance of the past. Louisiana has a bright future. We were dealt a great hand in this state. The things I talked about earlier, all the natural resources and the great people. We have an opportunity to deliver the Louisiana that you deserve. I'd like the opportunity to represent you. I wondered for a while, why in the world do we not have good people in government? I wondered, why are we always so frustrated with the Congress's 12% approval rating or whatever it is? It's because people step in with honest intentions. People step in because, you know what, they feel called to public service. Not be a politician, but to public service. Yet what happens? They get slandered. They get things made up about them. Things said about them, their children, and their family that are completely untrue. That's why you don't have good people in government. I'll say it for the third time. I'm not perfect, but I want the opportunity to represent you. We've been supported by the 13 parish sheriffs in this district. We've been supported by parish presidents. We've been supported by small business owners. And we've been supported by a majority, as you see in the polls, a majority of the 500,000 plus people that live in this district. I would like the opportunity to represent you, to go up to Washington, to do my best. Not to do it perfectly, to do my best, and you hold me accountable. I believe in the future of Louisiana. I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3 young children, and this is not about politics. It's personal. The last hayride's been written. We don't need a revisal.
Thank you, Candidate Graves. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you once again for coming out. This concludes our congressional debate tonight. I also want to thank everyone watching, and once again, thank both of the candidates. We very much appreciate you coming here to Livingston Parish, being a part of this event sponsored by the Livingston Parish Chamber of Commerce. Everyone be safe and have a good night.